as a young child, you ask your parents like, oh, tell us about the story of how you met and how did you connect, and you know, as a child, I have to tell you that it was always a little bit of a disappointment, because the story was that my mother at 17 fell madly in love with this, you know, the guy who was in the Armenian club at Harvard, 4 years older than her, and he was just off doing his thing, focused on his work and his degrees and his everything else. And as far as anyone knew, as every other man in the school threw themselves at her and begged her to marry them, this guy who she was madly in love with, it didn't seem like he was paying much attention. Until, what's that?
It's playing hard to get.
It's playing hard to get. Well, so it turns out until, you know, my mother's sister decides to go off and get married, and word gets around that there's a Bill Ezekian who's getting married, and all of a sudden,
10 years later.
10 years later. Oh, 10 years later. Yes, 10 years after. And so all of a sudden, Levon, you know, shows up at the Bill Ezekian house and
wants to know who's getting married.
wants to know who's
Do you want us to tell the story?
Yeah, you guys can tell the story. So I'm going with this. They'll all fix the story later. So he wants to know who's getting married, and now that he realizes that he could actually lose the woman who is the love of his life, although he has not yet expressed that, and we're not sure if he ever has, although he has in other ways. He has in other ways, and that's what I'm getting to. Decides that he should start dating her, and so the two of them start dating, and then the rest of the story. So now I'm waiting for something better to happen in this story, and I say, well, what about when you, you know, decided to get married? What was that like? What was the proposal like? And I was informed by my mother, and it was confirmed by my father, that the proposal was my father saying, well, I guess it's time that we should go see a priest. And so again, you know, as a child, it's kind of a disappointing story, and I'm trying to process this, and a little bit later on, there's an additional piece to the story. There's an additional piece that adds a little bit of context for me, and the additional piece is that at some point my father is hanging around my grandfather's house, and my grandfather, who was an electrician, a brilliant man, my grandfather, my mother's father, comments on the fact that he really likes this Levon fellow. He thinks he's going to turn out okay because he really knows how to use a screwdriver. And when I heard the story at 6, of course, it made a lot of sense to me because I had seen him fixing things all over the house all the time. He's a man who knows how to fix things. When I heard the story again at 13, I was like, wait a second. He said he was doing what? But so we've grown up with parents who have been seemingly polar opposites. My mother, who expresses her passion in every way possible, words, body, language, food, and my father, who likes to get the job done. And on the surface, it would seem, you know, he's the pragmatic one, and so on the surface it would seem that this would be a very difficult marriage, this polar opposite thing would be very difficult to last 50 years, and yet the thing that made it last is this incredible set of values that the two of them have. One is my father's patience with my mother giving him a hard time, and but the other is parenting. And so I just wanted to say that we're so incredibly lucky to have had them as our parents. And I just wanted to give 2 quick examples that I feel especially grateful for. That when I ran a couple of marathons, you know, my father would be there the night before with the map, laying it out. Let's get this right, and you know, figuring out this is where we can meet you and we can get there. And then the next morning, he would make sure that the family was there to cheer me on, and my mother would be the one screaming like a mad woman, you know, to keep me going. And the reality is, as a marathoner, you need both of those things. You need your logistician, and you need your insane person screaming all the encouragement at you. And you know, in some ways, it was a real metaphor for what we had growing up. You know, we had, and it turned out to be this incredible partnership. I'll say that I recently won my Democratic primary for the Maryland General Assembly, and I had the two of them there with that incredible partnership that they have raised us in over the last, I guess it started 46 years ago. Is that how old you are? She's
23.
She's very old. But the other thing that I also wanted to share, one other thing, which is in addition to the parenting, which they so deeply, which was as a deep value that they shared, despite whatever the other differences that appeared, was this incredible hospitality and commitment to opening their doors, our doors, to absolutely everybody who came through. And so some of you have experienced that. All of you probably have experienced it. And so, that you show up at the house and my mother, who has spent all day cooking, flings the door open, grabs you, sits you down at the table, and feeds you for 6 hours straight, and then sends you out of the house with Tupperware to take home with you. And my father spends several hours that night cleaning the kitchen after her. And so it's this partnership that a lot of people don't see, but their commitment that was both in terms of inviting everybody in to eat everything in the house, but also inviting people in to stay in the house for a day, 2 days, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And it's a custom and it's a tradition grounded in their faith. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. It's grounded in their culture. In Arabic, the words are ahlam usahlam. We're all one people, and that's the way that both my mother and my father opened their doors to everybody. And I got one last story on it, and then I'm going to let go of the mic. This is what happens when you give the politicians the mic. And so I grew up sort of taking for granted that everybody, would just fling their doors open and have random strangers living in their house for years at a time, coming from all over the world. And that they would feed people until they were stuffed. But one day when I was in college, my friends had come to visit in the summertime, and they were talking about how generous my parents were, and they were sitting in my mother's kitchen, and my mother was cooking, and there was a table, the kitchen table, and one of my friends was saying, I bet if you tell her that you like the table, she'll try to give it to you. And so my other friend said, well, let's see what happens. And so he said, Bethel, I was just really admiring this table. It's really incredible. And my mother said, well, we have another one in the basement. Why don't you take it home with you? Why don't you take it? And they ended up saying no, but if they had said yes, my father would have been there with his screwdriver, fixing up the table so they could take it apart and making sure that it fit into their cars and that they could drive off. And so it's a great partnership. It's a beautiful thing, and we're grateful to have it in our family and in our lives.
What I'd like to do actually is, first of all, thank you all for being here. And secondly, so my Aunt Martha, my mother's sister, wasn't able to be here today. She lives in California. And she had sent a few memories that we thought were fun and funny. And so we're going to share a few of them with you. So she said, so first of all, she wanted to mention that when she was in high school and later in college, Bethel always had the most boyfriends, whereas she had very few. I'm not sure if that's true or not. But that was her first thing that she wanted to mention. So during the summers, while Bethel was at Radcliffe and Martha was still at Newton North, she was the designated sibling assigned to discourage/get rid of the boys she did not like. So, and actually Gail's here. Gail might be able to comment on some of that. Gail.
She's right there.
Gail's keeping your mouth shut, apparently.
You can turn the camera off if you want.
So then Auntie Martha says, flash forward a few years, 1966, on one spring Saturday afternoon, Levon had a flat tire in West Newton, parentheses, about the time I was engaged to Harire. When he rang our doorbell, he asked to use our telephone because he had a flat tire in West Newton. Yes, he had walked a mile, his destination was our home on Lowell Avenue, to use our phone, likely hoping that Bethel was not getting married on June 4th. Because again, he had heard. Right. Oh, so what happened was Auntie Martha was about to get married, and according to different versions of the story, my father had heard that a Bill Ezekiel girl was getting married. So either he called, it's not clear if he called or he showed up, or maybe he did both. But apparently he had supposedly a flat tire.
Admit to either. He won't admit to either.
He won't tell us what actually happened. But supposedly he had a flat tire in West Newton, which is about, a 45-minute walk from Lowell Avenue? So a good half hour, 45-minute walk. So good job, Papa. So he walked a mile to use our phone, and then Martha says, incidentally, Bethel and Levon began dating the very next week.
But to add to that, my mother said, oh, I'm cooking hot dogs.
Right, so that's the next story that Auntie Martha said. She said, on that day, after walking a mile to use our phone, my grandmother thought he might be hungry, so she served him a quick hot dog with ice cold lemonade. Unbeknownst to my grandmother, Levon actually loved hot dogs. Hot dogs were his favorite food at the time. I'm not sure if that's true. He was never served hot dogs at home because he dined on delicious Armenian food made by his mother and sent to Harvard on a weekly basis. So the fourth memory that Martha wanted to share is that she was their maid of honor at their wedding, and she wore the same dress that Bethel wore to her wedding, where she was her maid of honor, which is probably a comment on my mother's lack of organizational skills, because she's probably making a dig at my mother to say that she wasn't organized enough to get her own wedding gown dress. But I'm not sure about that. So in those days, which is some of you here might remember, and I think this is a wonderful story, people saved up something called blue chip stamps from grocery store purchases to get merchandise. So it's like you could... green stamps.
S&H green stamps.
S&H green stamps, okay.
There's different colors in California.
Oh, right, apparently. So they had saved some, apparently. And after their wedding ceremony and reception, Levon drove Bethel, who was still in her wedding gown, to the store, and she went into her wedding gown to trade the green stamps for a set of sheets. Oh, can you? Okay,
so
she's
we're
going to.
driving away from the church, and I open the glove compartment, and there are these pile of S&H green stamps, books, all full of S&H green stamps. And I said, look, Mother, here's the S&H green stamp store. Let's go. We're all dressed in our wedding garb. We walked into the S&H green stamp store in our wedding garb and said, quick, we need sheets and pillowcases. And I said, is this a joke?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Hey, Dad.
So we have a couple more memories to share. This one's from Alison Atikian, who's Martha's youngest daughter, and she writes, and she also lives in California today. There was a cherry tree, just a little one out front. So
It says here.
Oh, it was right,
It's down there.
right over there. And once the cherries were ripe enough, your mom and we kids made cherry pie. It was delicious.
We picked tons. It took forever to pick those cherries.
And then you have to take the pits out, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we had a special
And they were like
cherry
sour.
pitter. I don't know, I think
Okay. The line. Keep going.
Cherry picker. Cherry pick. Cherry picker.
Maybe Charlie.
And
Charlie, maybe, yeah.
one other short memory is Uncle Levon's devotion to celebrating Bastille Day, which was always a lot of fun. I recall the two large flags, American and French, suspended from the trees right here behind us, where would normally be the Armenian flag and the American flag. On Bastille Day, July 14th, we would put the French flag up in place with the Armenian flag. And we would have brie cheese, French bread,
And then we would mimic the storming of the Bastille.
storming of the Bastille.
You're the man.
And
Let mom tell the stories.
sure. I guess I think my parents are in so many ways were ahead of their time. One anecdote is bringing up their children eating organic and natural food. Not very common in the late 70s and 1980s. Now it's everywhere. Now,
you could not find a new sister that really was close to all of us. And actually, my sisters and I didn't match my mother as much as she did.
She just has to say that.
No, Bethel.
Otherwise, she has to say that.
No, it's true.
I mean, my brother was, our pet, our favorite, because he was the only boy in our family.
My pet, too.
And I'm the youngest of and he came along, I think it was 8 years after I was born. So, and then this blue-eyed guy, they tell me is my brother. It was fun. I mean, we had lots of fun. I'll never forget the day. We were on the front porch or something, and I had to go someplace, and I'm going down Wilbraham Road. And I don't know if you even have heard the story. And suddenly I hear something, and I turn around. I'm almost at Wilbraham Road. Do you remember this? And you were calling me because you were too young to be that far away from home. And I don't know where I was going. And you know, I've never forgotten that.
Who's in the car?
No, we were in the front. We were in front of the house, and my folks knew where I was going. I'm 8 years older than he is, and I can't remember where I was going. Maybe I was going to Ashernithi's house, maybe Katakanini's. Anyway, fortunately I heard him, and when I turned around, I was so hurt that I did that to him. You never thought of it?
I never remember that.
You're fine.
Well, now I can forget it.
I just want to say thank you for always taking me in as one of your own. I always feel part of the family, and I really appreciate it. Especially since my mom died. My brother's here, his family, his kids, and it's just great because this place was really special to her. And you guys, even when I was a kid, I just felt like one of the family, and then especially after my mom died. So I really appreciate it. And I love you guys. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Good to see all your faces here today after a while.
The kids would see.
Congratulations, Peter and Levon.
Thank you, honey.
And I pray that I can also make it with my husband to 50 years of marriage. I hope I don't become emotional. Bethel and Levon have been my parent figures in this country ever since I met them.
Don't we look alike?
For everything we've done together, they made me feel comfortable in this country. When I had nobody to speak to, when I had nobody to consult for advice, they've always been there for me.
Hey, how about Baba?
I just want to appraise them for being very nice to everybody. And I pray that you continue to be like that. I love you so much. I love you.
We love you so much.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Hit him on the nose!
Stop. Do it again. Do it again.
Do it again!
Oh, can you do it again? Oh, you're
Send me photos.
You got it.
You're getting lots of pictures of them together this time, Karun.
That's cute.
Country on August 20th, 1970, I think it was, right? And I was supposed to be picked up by the editor of the Christian Science Monitor as a guest family for me. But lo and behold, not with my knowledge, my mother had written a letter to our uncle Harry, saying that my son is coming to America and all that kind of thing, and he's going to study there. So take care of him.
At MIT.
It's not important. So I landed at Logan Airport, and I was looking for this editor of the Christian Science Monitor, and lo and behold, Levon and Bethel come, and I'm carrying a big suitcase and a violin on my other hand, and they recognize me from the violin, I think.
Exactly right.
And there comes the editor of the Christian Science, and I forgot his name. I don't know what his name was. And Levon says, "I'll take care of him." The guy was really disappointed because we were exchanging letters. I'll be arriving at this time and all that kind of thing. Levon says, "I'll take care of him." He's my cousin. So that's how it started. The first two people in this country.
That's okay.
Oh, Kim, when did you get here?
I'm a late arrival, but so happy to be here.
Oh, no shit.
Bethel and Levon are my dear family, and Bethel and my mom grew up together. And Bethel always has reached out to me
through my ups and downs, and that's been really important. Brought me back into family. And the deep conversations we've shared, I cherish. And just knowing you're there, I can come for tea, we can knit, and your beautiful children, what you've created, and the Bilazikian bond. And that you have been a role model for longevity through all the divorce that happens, that it's not easy to stay together and work through all the things that come up in a marriage. So yeah, and so when I'm grateful for those role models in my life, those couples that have stuck it through thick and thin, and I admire that, and it's the strength and the character. And so may you have 50 more, and may you reunite in the next life. And so just God bless you and your family and everyone here, and I love you both very much. Thank you.
One of Bethel's big passions has always been yard sales.
Oh, yeah.
And some of you guys know this. And so I could give an old-timey story from many years ago, and you guys probably all could too, but I'm going to give a recent one. Because, okay, being a member of the family, she stays at our place on Cape Cod. All right, and she called me up when she was there to ask me a couple questions, all right, in her charming Bethel way. And Lavon's probably in the background going, oh, please, just leave him alone. In a subtle way.
That's true.
I am disappointed as a historian I was never in on any of those storming of the Bastilles, because I would have backed you up, brother. Well, Bethel had gotten so many things at the Take It or Leave It and all the yard sales on Cape Cod that she couldn't fit them all in her car. And so, in fact, my father, who is habitually Irish late, is showing up with some of that stuff for her today.
So a lot of you probably know my grandma's very good at telling stories. So one of her favorite stories to tell is a story about when she first met my Baba's mom. So she's driving with her friend, and haven't gotten there. And she sees Baba's house, and she says, "Oh, we have to go." So at this point, she's already is very much in love with him and wants to marry him. But Baba says, "Yes, yes, no." But Baba said that his mother was going to pick his bride. So Amma said, how is she going to pick me how is she going to pick me if she doesn't know me? So she's like, I got to go meet her. So she goes, she knocks on the door, she answers the door. She's like, oh, are you Levon's friend? Yeah, come on in. So she goes up, and then later Baba comes down, and it wasn't until after the wedding that they found out, that Amma found out from Baba's mother that Baba's reaction when he came up,
when he heard that a random girl had
showed up, was Eshana Bashna Tukururum. And for those who doesn't know what that means I spit on the head of a donkey. So here she is, Amma, telling me the story in my kitchen dining room. And she's teaching me slowly. She's like, oh, you need to know how to say this. So slowly, Eshana, Eshana, Vashana, Tukururum. And Baba comes in and is so surprised. She said, why are you teaching how to say this? And she tells him the story, and he's like, I've never heard this story.
So I did, 25 years ago, I did the photography for their 25th anniversary here. And I had I was 14 years old, I just got my first SLR, and they were like, and I was like, well, what should I do? Like, what do you guys want me to do? I'd never done photography for an event or whatever. And they were like, well, take pictures of Mom and Papa together. Oh, yeah. Take as many pictures of Mom and Papa together as you can. And the only picture I ever got of them together was one person was walking this way, one person was walking this way, and they stopped really fast, and they were both like right there. And that was the only photo I got of them together that day. And then in the spring, in May, I was getting the list together for this party, and I don't know how they made it 50 years, tell you the truth, because, oh my God. It took us like 2 months to figure out who to invite to this. By the way, you guys are all very, very special, because there are a lot of people that were knocked off the list, so you guys are very special.
Some of you almost didn't.
But I think the time when I started to understand more about Mom and Papa was, I think I was like 9 or 10 years old, and maybe a little younger, I might have been 8. And I found one of Mom's journals. No, it wasn't like that. It was like I thought it was going to be all about me. And it was all about Papa. So, that's it.
She's done.
Stories about when we were getting married. First of all, we almost didn't make it. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Because I was brought up in Armenian Evangelical Protestant church. My great-grandfather was the first Protestant minister in Marash, ancient Armenia, now known as Turkey. But what was I saying? So
Grandpa brought it back up.
We almost didn't get married because he was brought up in the Armenian Apostolic Church, and I was brought up in the Armenian Protestant Evangelical Church. And his uncle decided that I had to become his religion in order to marry him. And I said, there's no way I'm going to No, Uncle Harry. I'm not going to say which uncle. He's no longer living.
Okay, I know him.
And I said, there's no way I'm going to change my religion for some guy. I don't care how much I like the guy. I don't have to marry him. I'll just stay with him for the rest of my life. So, but as it turned out, my mother-in-law said, listen, I am Protestant, and I married in the Armenian Apostolic Church, and nobody made me change my religion, and I got married in the Armenian Apostolic Church. I said, oh, okay. So there were 2 priests in the church at that time, and the wonderful older priest who married us actually said, no, I'll marry you. But the younger priest was more rigid and felt that he shouldn't be marrying us until I converted. How can you convert from loving Jesus to loving Jesus? I don't understand.
It happens.
Jesus loves us. To get on. So my father said, well, this is what I'll do. My best friend is a Protestant minister, and I will have him there at the church with you. And if they try to make you change your religion, you just walk out of the church, and my friend will marry you on the front steps of the church. Well, as it turned out, I got married in the Armenian Apostolic Church. Hooray! No, you tell
The wedding day, which was August 17, was one of the hottest, muggiest days. And in the Armenian tradition, and other churches as well, we have to essentially hold our heads together like this as they tie
They tie a gold band around our head and hold a cross over our head.
And my cousin George, who used to live over there, had to hold the cross with his right hand. And he got tired. He got very tired, and he decided to switch to the left hand. And the tough priest said, "No, put it back in the right hand." The poor guy had to hold it all the way.
And to say that about Uncle George, his shoulder really ached because he was always pruning trees, and so he had a bad shoulder. To begin with. But nonetheless, he had to hold that cross, and he had to hold it in his right hand, and he had to hold it over us to make sure that we were married.
And also, it was so hot.
Wait.
At that end, it got very dark, and the reception's going to be outside. And I don't know if anyone was going to tell you, but my mother was determined to be a part of the preparations. But anyway, we thought there was going to be a thunderstorm. It was you know, there was so much that was exciting about their wedding. Just being there and watching all that was going on around it.
She made 1,000 images.
Well, I didn't want to boast.
Her mother, she didn't want to boast. His mother, my mother-in-law, really my mother, I don't like to call her mother-in-law, made 1,000 lemon, and that's what we had for our wedding reception.
Bethel, Levon, thank you very much for inviting me and my wife to be a part of your special day. 50 years, big deal, huge milestone. Jordan and I just celebrated our 8-year anniversary on Tuesday, so we have very similar anniversary dates. And I was really feeling what other people were saying earlier about being welcome in your home, because as you know, I've been a great friend of your son's for half my lifetime, you know, since I was 17, and we sat next to each other in math class, and we're on the same track team, and I feel like the amount of days and hours that I've spent at your house, you know, in your dining room and kitchen and living room and front porch and the random upstairs bedrooms, like I probably owe you a rent check or two, but I know you wouldn't cash it if I sent it to you. So I just thank you for your hospitality, and I'm super excited that we actually moved in around the corner from your house, so I get to drive by your home pretty much every day, which is a treat. It's like I'm coming home, you know, all over again. So thanks for being a great part of my life, and I wish you the best. So congratulations.
About a year ago, I got my permit, and afterwards I was home alone, and the phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was you, Bethel. And I asked you why you had called, and you said that you didn't know why, you just had a feeling that you should call. And so later, after I'd hung up talking to you, my mom asked me why I was crying. And I told her that my grandmother had asked Bethel to call me. And I'm just really thankful for you, Bethel, and you're the closest I can get to feeling my grandmother now, so thank you. I love you, and happy 50 years.
This goes back to some of the things that were already said in terms of the family just being so open and so welcoming, and just one of the things about Alma and Baba, or Levon and Bethel, that is so incredible and different from anybody else is how much they have welcomed me and the kids into the family at a time when it was so difficult for me, and I think for the kids. I'll never forget Vivian jumping in to help with the Thanksgiving preparations, and Bethel and Nisha and everybody just welcoming Vivian into the kitchen to help bake pies or whatever it was. They did cracking eggs. I've forgotten what it was. And then of course the how much everybody cared for me when the block of frozen soup, I think, fell on my head coming out of the refrigerator, because it was clear that Bethel was preparing to feed any army that came into the house at any one point in time. But it was all just really good memories, and to me, all part of the love and openness that the two, Bethel and Levon, have for each other and then for everybody else.
I've known Levon and Bethel and the Charkoudian kids since Daron was in the 2nd grade, because that's when he and my son Colin met. And the families got involved and intertwined, and it's been a glorious time ever since then. We've learned a lot from the Charkoudians. It's been great. So I think it's wonderful that they're having a 50th anniversary. So congratulations, Levon, and congratulations, Bethel, and enjoy your 50th.
Congratulations, Bethel and Levon, to your 50th anniversary. We are very lucky to have you as our neighbors, and you always welcoming us to your family. We wish that you can continue these parties for many more years. Thank you.
When I was a kid, I can remember my dad talking about the fact that the house that they had here was half of a schoolhouse, and unfortunately was destroyed by the tornado in 2011. But it was a good shelter for them up until that time. And while they were here, particularly, and while I had a farm and could use their help, one after another, the children have helped me on the farm. Not Nisha, but Lorik and Darren and Karun have all helped me on the farm. So I got to know them reasonably well and enjoyed them. And they're good workers, in case you want a reference. And of course, I knew Bethel and Levon. They're my age. In fact, I'm probably older. I'm almost as old as Alex, but not quite. So at any rate, we've always enjoyed a very congenial relationship, and certainly wish them a continued happiness